Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. Frank Fear, Greg Chris here with you. And Frank, another Wednesday night and back on the air again. And we got another good show for everybody tonight. And of course, like always, tons of stuff going on in Mountaineer world.
Boy, I'll tell you, you think, well, this is the off season because it's not football and basketball, but it's the on season with so much happening with baseball and the two basketball teams and recruiting, and of course, incredible volume on the football team. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, they keep coming. And, I would hate to be the one. One of the hard things I always dealt with coaching wise, I didn't have to do it a lot, fortunately, was having all these kids come out and you had to cut people. It's the worst thing
Hmm.
ever, you know. And I can't imagine what they're going through right now, trying to decide because they got to get rid of people, and that's pretty obvious, and that's got to be tough on them, I'm sure. And the only good thing for them is, they can, and I know my son's talked about this, they can help get those guys placed. It's not like they just cut them and then you see them in the hallway every day at school. They can find places for these guys to go if they're interested in playing somewhere else. So maybe that makes it a little bit easier. I don't know, but man, what a situation! I guess that's a good problem to have, though. To whittle down your roster and pick and choose what's best. I assume that's a good problem. I don't know.
Yeah, it's no. I think the coach has said they do try to help players get placed, and they have networks, obviously. But I looked this morning. You and I were talking about this. So far, just on the portal side, there's been movement of 93 players. That was this morning. 93 players either out or in. I think the numbers are 49 players came in from the portal and 44 players left through the portal. And Greg, that doesn't count the freshmen.
Right.
And so the NCAA has a limit; it's 105. So obviously they're going to have to make cuts. But he's putting Humpty Dumpty back on the wall, and he's got to have the players he wants on the field. And he said, as soon as spring practice is over, I'm going back in the portal. And Mark Parsons called me and said that like 15 minutes before the show, they brought in another player, a tight end from North Carolina. So it just
Wow.
continues. It just
Yep.
continues.
Yep. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. But um, I'm sure this is not totally familiar ground with the coaching staffs either. I mean, I don't know. Uh, you know, Rodriguez, the situation at Arizona or Michigan or anywhere like that, it wasn't things weren't out of hand like they are now, as far as people going all different directions. So I don't know if they've actually dealt with a situation like this either, where he has to come in and rebuild the roster um, and do it this way. I don't know if it's just an idea he came up with, or it's just the way it unfolded. But it's got to be a little bit unique to them as well. Trying to put this roster together and trying to pull players that fill needs.
Yeah.
I think they're good at that, but whittling that roster down, that's got to be a new situation for them.
Oh, no question about it. And, Mark Parsons did such a great job last week going over the roster that existed last week. And he said, when he left, he said, this is a moving target. And we're going to have Keenan Cummings from WV Sports and Rivals, a great beat writer, one of the best we have, not only in West Virginia, but in the country. And he's going to be with us next Wednesday. And that gives it more time to see how, because there is no deadline for adding players to the portal. And so, in other words, players would have had to commit to the portal a couple of weeks ago, but they can be in the portal, I guess, until the season starts. So we're going to have to see how it settles. And that makes it difficult on the fans because, in the previous years, we had a general idea who's going to be the starting quarterback, blah, 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 all the way on defense. And this year, I mean, you won't be able to know the players without a scorecard. You're going to have to, and we're going to have to get used to these guys because, as Mark said last week, they're coming from all over the country, and
Yeah,
in some cases from around the world. And so it's a different look for everybody, including, as you said, the coaches.
yeah. Yeah, the only on the flip side of that, they've got to get the roster solidified. I mean, you can't. I would think it would be very, very tough to bring somebody in, uh, you know, from in July that you were going to depend on to play. Uh, just too much to learn in too short amount of time. So, that thing has to be, getting a little bit more solidified every day. I would think, even though they still has, the big roster. Um, you have to believe that we're not going to be bringing in a bunch of people that they have to train. They have to teach the offense, defense, whatever it is. So hopefully, next week or so, we'll start seeing some slowdown in it and a little bit of, uh, I don't know what the proper word is, but a little bit of continuity with who the people are that get the reps and that sort of thing. So maybe Keenan can kind of guide us on that a little bit. That'll be interesting to hear. The baseball team has hit a little rocky patch, and of course we lost to the dreaded Pitt Panthers the other night in a crazy ending. And but baseball team's still good and getting close to tournament time, so everybody's looking for that. They're still first in the conference, so um, good stuff going on with the baseball.
Yeah, obviously, if you follow Facebook, and I know you do, as so many of our viewers do, there's a lot of concerns. And it was interesting that there are always parallels. And as you know, I've been looking at, and actually having our guest Lou with us tonight fits to that because I'm looking at the Catlett years, specifically 80, 86 to 89. 85, 86 to 88, 89. And that team that had that 22-game winning streak that obviously we're all excited about, they finished the year 3-3. They won three and they lost three. And I've been asking players, what happened? I mean, you were winning close games. They won 3 games by 2 points, and they blew out a bunch of teams, including Virginia Tech with the great Bimbo Coles. And then all of a sudden they hit the wall and they were blown out in the 6 games. They were blown out twice, but they also blew out 2 other teams twice. 2 games were relatively close. And the answer consistently was it's a long season and you get tired. It just drains you. And when you think about the baseball team, I think they're 1 win shy of having more wins than any other team in the country. They've lost 8, I think, now. Well, you add the 2 together, it's 47 games. And so as a consequence, that really drains you. You're on the road a lot. And so the question now is, okay, we lost 3 non-conference games in a row, Penn State, Pitt, and in Marshall. 2 of them they could have won. Actually, all 3 they could have won. Big series this weekend at K-State, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then KU here the following. So what we want to do is we want to get the regional here, and before that, we want to do really well in the Big 12 tournament. So we just got to stick with the team. It's a long season, and we'll know more as we see how this weekend series against K-State and Manhattan goes.
Yeah, and you talk about getting tired and a season wearing you down. Um, when you look at us having to travel like we do, that's got to weigh on them as well. I mean, you're going out to Kansas and Iowa and all these places and so far away. That's got to wear on you too. You think 50 games and, half of them, 1,000 miles away. It's not easy and it's got to wear them down and they've got to get tired at some point, and I'm sure this is the time of the year, the time of the season after 40 some odd games where you do start wearing down a little bit, and these trips have got to take their toll on them as well. So, but yeah, they're a good team, and I think they're going to be fine. Baseball it's a little bit different than obviously the other sports because you do play so many games. You lose 4, 5, 6, 8 games, whatever it is. When you look at their overall record, that's not bad, and
Mm-hmm.
baseball is a little different than the other sports, and you can lose games and not lose a lot of ground in your standing and that sort of thing. So they'll be fine. They're going to be fine. I think the tournament time that will rejuvenate them a little bit and hopefully get them going again. So it'll be interesting to watch them. basketball wise, real quick, man, I know when DeVries first started, we were pretty excited about the players he was bringing in. Thought, not a bad roster he's put together. Um, I think we're seeing the same thing right now. It looks like Coach Hodge is bringing in some awful good basketball players and bringing them in quickly. It's not like it's dragging out. He's filling that roster too quick.
Yeah, and what's really great about it is the roster is pretty close to being complete. 10 players, none from last year. The last player went into the portal from last year, so 10 players from the portal on the men's side, and the full roster on the women's side is 11. There are obviously some carryovers, some really good carryovers on the women's side. Jordan Harrison and Sydney Shaw and Jordan Thomas are three that pop out. But he signed some really good players. Two of the players, as we mentioned last week, on the men's side, are putting their toe in the water with respect to the NBA. They have until, I think, the 28th of May to withdraw their name. And a lot of players do that just to see where they stand with NBA scouts and GMs. And then I expect both of the players to recommit to WVU. There may be a few more. He'll try to get up to the 15 that he is seeking on the men's side. But as a coach, one of the things that struck us last year in a way that we didn't assume how well those players, almost all of whom were new, came together, blended together, and won a lot of really good games. That tournament, for example, international tournament where they knocked off, Gonzaga in Arizona. But we'll see how these players mesh together. That's a key thing. And as you know, what's really important is that point guard.
Yeah, and that's kind of the new thing now in basketball and in all the sports really is that you got to get that chemistry. A lot of people say, "Oh, there's no such thing as chemistry," but
No.
I disagree. I think there is something to be said about playing together and getting used to one another and that sort of thing. And that's kind of the new job of the coach nowadays is you get your players in there, you got to get them meshed, and I think that's just the way it is now. That's the new age of coaching. You gotta get those guys together and get them meshing together and playing together. And if you can do that, you can have success. And I think that's what DeVries did last year. I'm not totally familiar with the new coach and I've watched his teams play, and you can't really tell from that level because they keep their players. It seems a lot more than what the bigger schools do these days. But I think he's going to do fine. I don't remember a time, Frank, and maybe you do, but when there's so much anticipation about the upcoming seasons, and I know football, of course, because Coach Rodriguez is back. I think everybody instantly is expecting us to go 11-1 and win the Sugar Bowl again. But I think there's a lot of anticipation for football and basketball. People are looking forward to Rodriguez being back, and I think people are excited about the new coach and what he has to bring.
Yeah, I was talking with Mark Parsons about this earlier today, and that is that in the old days, which is about 5 years ago, the old saying was, well, a new coach is coming in, you got to give him at least 3 to 5 years on football. Yeah. And that's like right now it's about 3 to 5 months. And so, these guys have to deliver quickly. And what we're seeing and what we saw last year with Coach DeVries, what we're seeing now with Coach Rodriguez and with Coach Hodge is, as soon as they got off the plane or they drove into Morgantown, they literally, not just figuratively, they literally hit the ground running, and they're signing these people, which also is a good sign because that tells you that the donors are giving to WVU for the nil, because you're not going to grab. When you look at the players who are coming, a lot of them have been around. Sometimes it's their second school. The basketball team is senior loaded, just like last year was, and so there has to be an incentive. And we all know in a market system, schools are trying to outbid each other. And so, but they're up to the task. Even though, as you said earlier, they don't have a lot of experience in this. They're learning. They're
Right.
learning as their way through it. So, yeah, a lot of anticipation. People want success. Obviously, they want to succeed, and there's more pressure than ever. You were a coach, and you know what that's like. There's a lot of pressure to win.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, with the money that's involved, that just adds to the pressure. And yeah, it's not going to get any easier for these guys. We got a great guest tonight. I'm excited about this. I had this gentleman on my show back a year or so ago, year and a half ago, maybe longer. Not sure when, but Lou Pelliccioni, of course, is who we're talking about. Lou is a former coach, coach with Coach Catlett. He's written a few books, and the last book, and when we get him on, I want to talk to him about that one first. And the title, it slips me exactly, but I know it was "How Not to Choke." Was I'm guessing that's close to it. But anyway, let's go ahead and bring Lou in. Lou's waiting on us backstage, and we'll get him in there. There he is.
There
Lou
we go. Hi, guys.
Hey, Lou, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Good to see you. The stars aligned just perfectly, so we can get you on short notice tonight. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we're looking forward to talking about your past books, your new book, and of course some of your days at WVU. So, Frank, I'm going to give you the honors to go ahead and start off and get started with the Lou.
Well, I did not know Lou. Actually, we talked today the first time. He was on your show before. Very impressive. I've read his bio before on Amazon. You can go to Amazon, buy the book. You can go to Barnes and Noble too, but there's a nice bio there, which is great. And Lou, you've done so many things. I mean, it's amazing. I think you mentioned earlier you were a coach at the age of 19. You were on Gail Catlett's staff back in 1978. You're an author, you're an entrepreneur, you're still in business. And so why don't you give us a tour of your bio? It's very impressive.
Well, I started coaching when I was 19 years old, and one of the reasons is because as a freshman, I was 18 years old, and I played on the West Virginia University freshman team. And I had to guard Fritz Williams at the time because the freshmen, they would use us as bait and go in. And that kind of told me that I better go into coaching because there was no way that I was good enough to play. And but I had a great year that year. And then the sister called me at St. Francis because the 8th grade coach had gotten sick like a week before practice. And she called and said, Lou, we need you. Can you do it? And I said, well, yeah. I said, I can do it. Is it okay? I'm only 19, but I know I can do it. And they got special permission, and I coached the team, and we did very well. I was very pleased. I think we were 13-3, and the year before they'd only won 3 games. So, but I had good players. That's the thing probably I learned as I've gotten older. You think you're a little bit better than you are, but you're only as good as the players you have.
Amen.
And I can tell you that, and because I've coached a lot of different sports, I've played a lot of different sports. And so then I helped the high school team for a couple of years. And then I was a senior in college, and the head coach at St. Francis left, and they came to me and said, we'd like to have you as our head coach. And I was 21, just turned 21 years old. And they had to get, again, special permission because I wasn't even out of college yet. So I was taking college classes. I was teaching kids and coaching all at the same time.
Wow.
But just had wonderful, wonderful players at St. Francis. And we won some state championships that had never been done in school's history. And then I decided to try the small college. And Gary McPherson, who's been a good friend ever since I was coaching high school. And he talked me into going to AB college with him. And they were supposed to give me the job after he left because he said he was only going to be there 1 year. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And as Lou grew up a lot and found out that not everything that you're told is going to end up being true, but that's okay. That's all one of the obstacles in life. But because of it, I had such a wonderful experience going to Concord College and coaching with Don Christie and getting to meet Archie Talley, which I've got a great story about him that I'll tell you. And then after that, Gail had taken over at WVU, and I got asked to come on board, and it was probably as good as 7 years as I've ever spent, and I would do it all over again. And then decided after that, because of a lot of things. I mean, I tell these young assistant coaches when I see them, I said, you guys had it easy. I said, we recruited 365 days a year. I mean, and I'm going to tell you, Catlett was not easy. I mean, and so I'd be gone sometimes 30 days in a row. And It was kind of tough with the family and all that. And so I kind of decided what I wanted to do. And I had another hobby. I've been very fortunate. I went from my passion to my hobby, and that was the stock market. And Warren Buffett's been my idol since I was 18. And then all I know is it seemed like yesterday, and it was 41 years ago that I've been at and still working. And so that's kind of around it. I've published 4 books during that time. 2 were on basketball. 1 was on skill development. 1 was on body development, which I think helped my high school teams win at where they won at. I was lifting weights, or we were lifting weights at St. Francis in basketball in 1970. And there were some football teams that weren't even lifting weights yet. And so just very fortunate. Had kids that worked hard and everything. And then I did the book because I was working on my master's in speech and communication, and we had people that were dealing with anxieties and all that. And I was always talking about sports, and I'm saying, all right, I know somebody can be afraid to give a speech in public. It's the #1 fear in America. What about a basketball player that is great in practice, but not in the games? And they said, well, you want to find out? We can do that. So I went around the state for a whole year, and I went to, I think, every high school. And we had a test, and we had to narrow the questions down, and we called it Define Your Choke Potential. And so we came out with the book. It's out of print right now, but it's amazing how many times I get people that want it, and you can still get it on Amazon. There'll be used copies, and it's called Don't Choke. And just had an unbelievable year going around the country and giving talks. And I spent 2 years with the PGA and gave talks around the country. And you'll love this one story. I got to tell it. My very first talk, I'm like 30 years old, 29 or 30. I walk into Riviera Country Club, this huge, gorgeous facility. I'm in a room, those big rooms with wood doors, wood floors. And I'm about 2 minutes away from giving my talk. And I got my head down and I'm looking over everything, getting ready to give my talk. And I hear somebody coming in, but I don't look up. I'm getting ready. Right before I'm ready to start, I look up and I'm looking right at Arnold Palmer that had come in to listen to my talk. And he came afterwards and we talked for an hour. And he said, Lou, you are right on it. It is exactly one of the most important things. He said the 6 inches between your ears, that's what dictates great players and great performers. He said, he gave me this line, which I loved. He said, you can put bags over all the guys hitting on the practice range. And you can't really tell except the few that have weird swings. They all can hit the ball. They all can do it. It's what's between those 6 inches between your ears, how they handle the stress, how they handle the pressure. And so, like I said, I did that. And then I've been wanting to give back because I've been so blessed. And so 5.5 years ago, I was having dinner with one of my ex-players, and I'm always telling stories. And he said, Coach, you've got to get those stories written down. So I thought about it. I had just read Chicken Soup for the Soul, which is nothing but stories. And I knew what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back to high schools, which I'm starting to line up for the fall. And I need to talk to you about that, Greg, because I'd love to
Yep.
come down to talk
Yep.
in your area to some schools.
Absolutely.
And I just didn't know it was going to take me 5.5 years to get to do what I want to do. And that's get back and talk to high school kids, teachers, and even parents. That's what I've been lining up. I mean, there's a couple of high schools I've talked to. They said, will you talk to our teachers? I said, sure. And they said, well, will you talk to our parents? I said, sure. And obviously they said, we want you to talk to the kids. And then I've got a fundraiser, which I really like. I want to give back. And I've got a 3-hour online course on success broken into 10 to 12-minute segments. And I'm going to sell that. And I'm going to give the majority of the profits to sports departments in any high school that's interested in doing that as a fundraiser.
Awesome.
And so that's kind of how it all came about.
But, you know, Lou, I marvel listening to these stories. You know, back then when you wrote the book on choking, you know, it wasn't, you know, the psychology of sports
Yeah.
wasn't real common back then. You know,
No,
today,
it was
you know,
not.
these guys, yeah, these guys all have their own psychologists and everything with them now,
Yeah.
and
Today,
it has
yeah.
become a yeah, it's become an integral part, not just in golf, but in all the sports. You know, you hear them talking about, you know, baseball players, they can't get the ball across the plate, they lost their pitch, you know, their ability to pitch and that sort of thing. So they see a psychologist, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think, you know, obviously ahead of your time on that, but for sure.
Yeah,
But
we were, I think, Greg, I think we were the second sports psychology book out. The Inner Game of Tennis came out right before our book came out, and then we came out right after that. And what's funny, you can look at it today, and we're talking about self-talk and visualization and all those things, and that was 40, 43, 44 years ago. And
right,
people were wondering. In fact, some of the players, I'll run into Lester Rowe or some of them, and they'll say, "Coach, we remember you having us lay down and imagine, you know, foul shots and all that." And they said, "You were just way ahead of your time."
no question about that. I know I have a brother who's a clinical psychologist, and we talked about your book and some of the things that were in it, and how he had used, you know, those type of things in his talks and you know, all the consulting that he had done over the years. But he said, "Oh yeah," he said that was that's what they use today, and he said
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
you know that was just ahead, like I said, ahead of his time. So
Mm.
yeah,
that's awesome, and I know you know the players that go through those type of things. You know, again back then, you know if someone knew you saw a psychologist, well they thought you were crazy, basically. Today it's just a common thing, you know, that's
yeah.
what many
Well,
of them
we
do.
know,
You know?
but Greg, a lot of it is we know so much more about the brain than we
Right,
did, you know, 40 some years ago, because they're just studying the brain so much today versus what we were doing 40, 50 years ago. And we know how powerful the brain is. And you basically set your reality by what you think about. And
Mhm.
that's why it's so important, that, you know, young people know these kind of things and learn these things at an early age. And, you know, I'm just hoping that I can get through to a few of them to understand how important. One of the things that I did, you'll like this too. Like I said, I every month at Success Authors, we have a meeting all over the country, a Zoom meeting just like this, and we'll have 30 to 40 editors and 200 authors will be on, and they'll discuss different books and different things that are going on and stuff. And this one time, my book was up, and this lady, this has been a good almost when I started, and she said, "Lou," she said, "Are you Michael Jordan?" I'll never forget it. I remember I said, "Well, no." I said, "He was one of my favorites, I have to admit." And she said, "Okay, you're talking about success. That's what your book is about. What's going to separate your book from the other 100 books on success out there?" And you know what? she caught me off guard, and it made me really think. And she said, I'm going to tell you something. I've read every success book out there. I love reading about success books. And she said, I'm going to tell you something that if you put it in your book, it will really add to what you're talking about. And she said, go and find research from Harvard, from Stanford, from wherever that backs up what you're talking about. And I'm going to tell you, I've got something like 75 research projects that all talk about success. And I learned some stuff. And I've been around it my whole life. And I knew about it, but I didn't know how important or what the success, how it really dictated. And it was exactly some of the things that you hear. You know, like today, one of them, just to give you an example of one, if you want to be happy, successful, and live a long life, now there's three different things there. You got to have connections. If you're going to be happy, that's friends, family. If you're going to be successful, we all know the number one thing was in success with in any industry is your connections, because they can make it easier. And then if you want to live longer, because what happens when people get older is they lose their friends, they lose their spouses, and they have nobody. And they just drift off versus the people that go out and continue to find. And it's one of the things I told a teachers group the other day. I've already talked to one in service day up in northern West Virginia in service, and we talked about, and they said, well, okay, how can we use that? I said, it's real simple. Get every kid involved in clubs. Talk to their parents. Make sure these kids get out and get used to being around whatever it is. Other kids, I don't care how they feel about it. That as a parent is extremely important to get your kids involved and get them to get connections. And it's obviously for different reasons when they're younger, but it will lead to success. And like I said, I know every bit of 70. And I talked to this teachers group, and one of the ladies came up after and said, you know, I've been to a lot of in service, but this was extremely interesting. We've never heard anybody come in and talk about success with kids and things you can do. How about this? The number one reason that will dictate success is if parents do this one thing. What do you think it is? What parents can do to make sure their kids are successful. It runs the gamut. If you do this and you look at your kids later in life, they're successful because of this. It's something parents do. It's called
get them involved.
Yes, it's a way. Chores. Because of what it does for kids. It gives them self-esteem. It makes them understand you're not given everything. You've got to work for things in life. And it's just unbelievable. So I'm watching my two grandkids about a week ago, and they finished the gymnastics class. And I said, okay, I'm going to sit back and watch and see how many of the parents help their kids with their shoes. And my granddaughter that was in this class was almost 5 years old. So obviously they should be able to put their shoes on. About 50 or 60% went right over, slipped their shoes on, did whatever, no problem. The other 40, parents were there putting their shoes on for them. And there was even one that was having a real hard time, and the parent went in and saved the child, which is also you don't want to do. You let them fail. You let them fail and figure it out. And those are all success traits, and those are all things that our teachers and our parents should be doing. Don't save these kids. Let them fail. If you didn't study, they shouldn't pass. And then they find out the consequences now versus when they're 25 and they don't study, and then it hurts them in life and so forth. So there's a lot of good studies in the book. And I do think it really makes it a good thing for parents and for teachers to read. Besides kids, it's written basically for young people. But I've had parents read it and said, wow, I love it because I learned a few things. I learned a lot when I was doing it.
Yeah.
So,
It's ironic talking about that yesterday. My wife and I, on our way back home from Morgantown, we were talking about our kids. I have two sons, and I told her, I said, one of the things that I'm most proud of in those two kids is the fact that they're so outgoing and they've made all these connections. They're not afraid to go talk to people. I said, they're all the things that I wasn't as a young person. A little bit shy, etc. I know that people find that hard to believe, but I was. And my two sons will have always talked to anybody and everybody, adults, and both of them have been very successful as a result of their independence and their ability to communicate and that sort of thing. So that's interesting that you mentioned that. You also mentioned earlier that you had a story about Archie Talley. I've had Archie on my show a couple times, and he helped us out with a fundraiser in Morgantown not too long ago. Very kind, very giving, and just a super nice guy. And I know you said you had a story about him, and what a basketball player.
and I first year, and I was doing all the scouting and the recruiting. So Gary says to me, Lou, I want you to go over to Salem and watch them. We play them next week. I said, okay. So I went over. As I walked in, the teams were getting ready to go get dressed. And I knew who Archie was because if you knew anything, he had a purple suit on.
Oh, yeah.
He had a hat on with a purple feather. And I knew it was him. And I'd never met him, didn't know what he looked like. And I think he had like 40 in the game. And he's one of the best shooters I've ever seen. One of the best pure shooters that I've ever seen. So I go back next day, Max talking. He says, well, how'd it go? I said, Gary, I'm going to tell you something. He's one of the best shooters I've ever seen in my life. And Gary goes, come on, Lou. He plays at Salem College. How good can he be? All right. So we went over plays and different things. And so we're at the game, and they get the tip, and they give it to Archie, probably 2 or 3 steps past inside half court, and he drills it. Coach Mack turns over and looks at me. I said, I told you. I think he got 50 against us. And we did everything. We double teamed him. I mean, we had a short guy on him, a big guy on him. He was just a pure shooter. And I'll tell you, as good a shooter, the following year he came down quite a few times to Concord and got to know him. And I've never met a finer individual.
Yeah, good guy. And I was in middle school when he was playing in college, and I'll never forget one of the big things that we got to do every year. Like those of us that played basketball, they took us on a trip to Charleston to watch the conference tournament, and I remember first time seeing him, and I couldn't believe it. And he's the only guy I ever seen. He would dribble the ball down the floor and never bring it in front of him. He'd dribble it behind his back all the way down the court, and then he would just stop and he'd cross half court and he'd let it fly. And there was no 3-point line.
He could stop and just like in midair. It was just like he was in slow motion.
He told a good story too. I think he was talking about they were playing a game and one of his teammates had said something about him double teaming him, and he said I was wide open, and he's like, well, there's a reason you was wide open, and he said, double teaming me, and he said, I'm not. Why would I throw it to you when I can shoot it?
Yeah.
He said, so I didn't have a lot of assists. That's what he told me. Yeah, he was some kind of a player. Also, another.
Greg, many good memories from sports. And then I was in charge of Coach Catlett's camp. And we had about 1,000 kids a summer. And we had kids, and after my 7 years there, we had at least one kid from every state in the union. Now, I spent a lot of time on it, and Gail wanted me to. We had kids from Canada. We had kids from all over the country, all over the world that came to our camp. And every year, listen to this experience that he gave me. For about 6 to 8 weeks in the summer, Coach Catlett sent me to basketball camps all over the country. I was at Jerry West camp, Radley camp out at Washington State, where I learned how to use to bus kids in from Canada.
Sounds like Mickey has joined.
I think so. Greg, do you want to describe what's going on in the background? The viewers can't see that at all. Do you want to, or do you want me to do it?
Either way, it's fine. Lou, if you'll hang on with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, you hang on.
Let us get Mickey squared away.
Yeah.
So Mickey is at.
Why don't we do this, Greg? There's so much noise back there. Darren, why don't we bring him in and then we'll explain, because there's so much noise. There he is. What's going on here is that Mickey's at the WVU Caravan in Glade Springs. And Mickey, can you hear us? And that's Coach Rodriguez right there. Let's.
Yeah, Frank, I'm right outside the event hall here. Coach Rodriguez is saying goodbye. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you okay.
Yeah. We need Junior. This is just breaking up here. Quite a night here. Got the Mountaineer here with us this evening. Let me get him on camera.
Sure.
On a broadcast. He's from Fayetteville, West Virginia, a little town about 10 minutes away. We're doing a podcast here this evening about Mountaineer sports. Okay. Got anything to say to Mountaineer Nation?
Coach Rodriguez. He's been on before, Mickey.
He was on our show.
Ready for push-ups and buy a lot of black powder. You guys hear that?
No, he was on a couple of weeks ago, Mick. So Greg brought him on. So it's great to see him.
Hey, it's good seeing you guys as well. Yeah, the Mountaineer said that Coach Rodriguez just had the Mountaineer on here. Let me see if I can get him back on camera.
Okay.
He said Coach Rodriguez told him two things. You want to repeat that for me?
Yep. He said, make sure I can do a lot of push-ups and make them buy me a lot of black powder.
There we go.
So if that gives you any indication.
There you go.
He plans on scoring a lot. Yeah, this event is just closing out here. Frank and Greg, great turnout this evening. There were about 200 people here, I would say. This is annually, they do what's called the Coaches Caravan, where they take all the coaches on a 5-day trip. And it includes a tennis coach. Jen, the women's basketball coach, was here this evening also. We had her on the show several months ago. We had the women's basketball coach, had the national champion rifle team and their coach here. Of course, the new basketball coach and Coach Rodriguez as well. One of the things that the Tony Caridi, by the way, was the master of ceremonies for the evening, and he made the statement of the 5 stops. They started out in Parkersburg on Monday night. They did Washington, D.C. last night, down here in Glade Springs tonight. So far, this is the biggest turnout of those 3 locations. The caravan continues on to Martinsburg tomorrow evening, and then I have to get the word to my brother, Bob Zatelli. They finish it out in Pittsburgh on Friday night. It was just a great evening. Ren Baker kicked off the remarks of the evening, making an announcement, and I was unaware of this, that every year the NCAA gives out NCAA Directors Cup for the winningest program in college athletics for the preceding year. Right now, of all the schools in the nation, where do you think WVU ranks?
3rd.
Want to take a guess?
3rd.
21st in the nation. 21st in the nation of all schools throughout the country. And within the Big 12 itself, number 2 in the Big 12, pending the end of the baseball season, we may have a shot at number 1 in the Big 12. And that's across all sports. volleyball, basketball, rifle, football, of course, soccer, all the sports that compete on the NCAA level. It was just a great evening, filled with gold and blue. Everyone out to celebrate the Mountaineers. Everybody really behind Coach Rodriguez coming back and behind Coach Hogue and his endeavors to rebuild a basketball team completely from scratch. Doesn't have a single player coming back from last year's squad. So you see some of the crowd leaving here as I'm talking, hopefully. But it was just a wonderful evening. And Grant also made the comment that traditionally, not only has this been the biggest crowd so far, the 3 nights, that traditionally on an annual basis, Glade Springs has the biggest turnout. Of course, you're pulling people from all over southern West Virginia to this particular location. But it was just a great evening to be a Mountaineer. And just wanted to share that experience with you. Thanks for letting me pop in here for a few minutes. Any questions?
No, it sounds great. A lot of enthusiasm.
Oh, yeah, a lot of enthusiasm. No question about that. As a matter of fact, we had another celebrity here this evening, Owen Smith.
Oh,
and Owen is actually a volunteer assistant football coach over at Greenbrier West, working with the offensive lineman, of course. Of course, Owen played for Coach Rodriguez, and Rich Rod had a few stories to tell about Owen when he was under his tutelage playing college sports. They were pretty interesting stories. But all in all, just a great night here. Very enthusiastic. And let's go Mountaineers. It's a great day, as Tony would say. It's a great day to be a Mountaineer, no matter where you may be.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, Mickey. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that.
All right, I'll pop out.
Thanks for checking in.
Yep. All right. Thanks for having me. See you guys later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Frank, I'll say this. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought that I would have a in-depth look at Mickey's ear. That was interesting.
And, and a wonderful ear it is.
Yes, it is. Leave it to Mickey.
Yeah, we would have talked to you about that, but we didn't know that was going to happen until about half an hour before the show. And Mickey was so excited about it. I thought for a second we might be able to get Coach Rodriguez on, but unfortunately, at least we saw him.
Yeah, at least we got to see him. That's what I was hoping. But yeah, Mickey gets excited. Yeah. But Lou, we apologize. That happened.
Oh, you don't have to worry about that. Not at all.
Before showtime, he contacted us. I wonder if he could come on live with that.
No, I think it's great. Sure. I remember going to Glade Springs.
Yeah,
they've been doing that for years. Yeah,
nice place.
I've made that trip before. Just wonderful people down south. The whole state. The whole state.
I think
go ahead.
People underestimate the number of people, the southern part of the state, and how much they are Mountaineer fanatic, maybe even worse than the northern part, because we're not as close to it down here. So people really are enthusiastic down here about it. So I'm not surprised of the turnout there.
Lou, you were talking about golf before, and I was thinking about it when Mick was there. Obviously, the enthusiasm for WVU sports, but of all the great experiences I've had in Morgantown, the one that sticks out was one that was related to golf. And you mentioned Arnold Palmer. We had, by a stroke of luck, we had a chance to watch that great match between Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer at Lakeview. I think it was in 1971. It's still memorialized there. Oh, man, that was an incredible experience.
I was there, too. Yeah, Frank, I was there. And,
Lou, I got to ask you another question, too. I know we have a mutual friend, Bob Music. And,
you had to mention him. I had to put up with him for 2 hours at the book signing, and he was in the middle of everything.
Oh, I guarantee you.
Just in the middle of everything. But he's been a great friend for 50 to 60 years and always causing trouble everywhere he goes. But
I think he was angling for him to be. And I had him on my show, and of
Oh
course
my.
I had him and Mark on like weeks apart, and they were, of course, discussing their big rivalry games when they were coaching middle school football, and
Yeah.
all
How'd you get him to shut up? Because normally
the.
you just give him the microphone and he'll talk for an hour solid.
Yeah, that was an easy interview, no question about it. I did have to mute him a couple times.
You know I'm going to regret it. I'm going to get a phone call tonight.
Bob and I've been well. He was him and my brother worked together for years, and then of course I've known him for I guess 40 years now, 35, 40 years. He was on the board of the
Yeah.
place I worked for in Morgantown, and stay pretty close to him. But yeah, well, he's something different now. I'll tell you,
Good
Bob is a
guy.
special guy. Yes, he is a great guy. But you got this new book now out, and we'll take a minute just to talk about that just for a second, and then tell people how they can get it. I know we mentioned some places already.
Now I finally got where I can get to the point of what I want to do, and that is I want to go back and talk to young kids where I was motivated as a high school. I mean, I'll give you an example of one talk. And we've got today where you can get on the internet and read everything, see everything, but I want to tell you something. It's not the same as having someone live there and you're looking right at them and they're telling you things and they talk to you and everything. And I used to go to the Morgantown Touchdown Club. My dad would take me every year where they would honor the WVU teams. And this one year, the Wheaties guy came, sponsored by Wheaties. And I'll never forget and how much he motivated me by talking about reading. And he said, and I've never forgot it, he said, if you do not read, you will not be as successful as you could have been. And at the time I was 15 or 16, I was not a good reader. And that was it. I wanted to be successful, and I became an outstanding reader. I mean, I can speed read. I can go through a book in an hour, to get what I need. And of course, there's all kind of special apps out there that if you want to find out what some book is about or something like that, and that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But there's no question it motivated me. And I went every year, and there were another time a guy talked about following your dreams. And that's what I've done. Even though some people tell you, you got to be careful what you do. But you know what? I just have always been the kind that I like what I'm doing. And there was a book that came out. It's a really good book for young people and even older people to read. It's called Grit. It's done in 2004. And this lady, Angela Duckworth from Stanford University, did all the research on success. And she found out that it wasn't necessarily intelligence, not that it hurt. It wasn't IQ, not that it hurts. But the number one factor with people that are successful was grit. And grit is passion and perseverance. And I can vouch for that. I've had passion everything I've done in life, and everybody has obstacles. And let me tell you something. It's tough to get through obstacles if you don't have passion and love for what you're doing. A lot of people quit. One of my favorite things, that National Quitting Day is the third Friday in January. Those are the multi-million people that have New Year's resolutions, and something like 90% of them quit by the third Friday in January. And so obviously there's a lot of things involved in to be successful. And that's what I've tried to do in my book. There's 90 some reasons. Now, some are more important than others. Just like I said, chapter 1 is find your spark. I've just been lucky. My spark was coaching and teaching. I did it for almost 20 years, and then I went to my hobby. So it was very easy to work the extra hours when you had to and things like that. And it's just been, like I say, I've tried to put down things thinking of remembering when I was young of things that I needed to hear. And so I really want to go back. And my goal is to talk in every high school in the state of West Virginia that wants me. and I will do that. And of course, there is no charge. I would never charge a high school. And I also have a fundraiser to help them raise money. And I have such a feeling for giving back because I've just been so blessed. There have been so many good people in my life from my parents on, and I just want to give back. And that's what started this book, and that maybe I could touch some people. An interesting story. I gave a book to a young lady that I've got to know probably over the last 7 years because she's a waitress at one of the restaurants that our Wednesday group goes to. Every Wednesday, we'll have anywhere from 4 or 5 people to 20. And it's just like she was always there waiting on us. So I gave her a copy, and I'll bet it wasn't 10 days she'd already read it. And she said, I just want you to know how inspirational this book has been to me as a young person that has a life ahead, and looking at what you're talking about and saying that I can do it. And how do I know you can do it? Because I did it. And I'm an average guy. That's all I am. It's all I've ever been. But I have a great affinity for never quitting. And the perseverance that it takes to do the things that you have to do, whether it's winning championships, whether it's accomplishing things, whether it's taken 5.5 years to write a book when, I thought we were done 2 years ago. And then I found out we didn't have all the right permissions and started trying to get permissions. Oh my gosh, it's so much harder today than it was because of all the things you have to do with permissions with writing a book. And when you use other people, which I wanted to, and I wanted to get the opinions from all kind of different people. So that's what it's all about. That's what I'm after. That's what I want to do. And, I've already been thanked by a young person, so it's already been worth it. I said, if I can motivate one, it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
I've already got a letter back from that person saying how much she really enjoyed the book and how much it's helped her to move her to start doing things that she should be doing and wanted to do, but was afraid to do them.
Go ahead and tell folks, Lou, how they can get the book. Where and how.
Well, the easiest way is just go to Amazon. I will have a web page. It's almost ready, but I don't want to put it up until it's 100%. And there'll be a lot of different things that people can get besides the book, the online course, which I said is 3 hours. I mean, it was interesting. You guys will like this story. I'm in one of those meetings again that we have every month, and this one lady from the company, Successful Authors, says, Lou, she says, my husband and I are going to buy your online course as soon as it's finished. And she said, we have 2 teenage sons, and I don't know if you know why we want to do it. And I said, yes, ma'am, I do know why. And she said, you do? And I said, well, I've coached. I was a teacher, a coach, and a parent. You're looking for someone to tell your kids the same thing you want to say to them, but they'll listen to me or somebody else more than they'll listen to the parents. And she said, you're right. You do know. But listen to this neat idea. She said, we're going to get it. And once every 2 weeks, we're going to play 1 10-minute segment right before dinner. And then we're going to discuss it at dinner. And she said, I love it. Instead of us telling our 2 teenage kids, we can say, Coach Pelliccioni just told you how important responsibility is, how important planning is, how important goals are. I mean, just amazing. Talking about goals, let me tell you this research. Listen to this research. This will blow your mind. It did me, and I've been around goal setting and all that for years. There's a study out there that was done over and over again. And they took college kids that had graduated. 3% of them had written goals. 13% had goals, but they didn't write them down. And the other 86%, or was that 86, 13, yeah, whatever, didn't have goals at all. They said, I don't know really what I want to do, whatever. They went back 10 years later. Of course, you know what it's going to be. The kids that wrote down their goals were doing 10 times better than the rest of the kids. That's how important goal setting is. And it's almost a lost art.
Mhm.
I'm just so fortunate. If you can believe this, every year between November and December, I've set my goals, written down my goals for the following year. And I've never missed. And I've got goals for next year. I want to talk at as many high schools as I can. And it's written down. And we know that if you write your goal, you're halfway there. And but we don't teach that. We don't teach kids to do that. There's another study that's out of the 100 best productivity tips. The number one thing in being more productive is called time box planning. And all that is planning your day so that every hour is planned. It might be recreational. It might be, having a meeting. It might be reading. It might be going to school. If you do that, you are way more efficient. And of course, you should also do it. I know you'll find this hard to believe. I do it every night. Still do. I plan my day. It takes me 10 minutes. I can plan it and watch TV. But what you are is you become way more efficient. And this is one of the things that I want to make sure young people understand. You've got to have goals. You've got to plan your day.
Let me ask you this question. Just popped in my mind when you're talking about goal setting and goal setting for young people, and you also mentioned, the New Year's resolutions that people
Right.
quit on after a couple of weeks. When they set these goals, um, do you suggest that they suggest extreme goals, or I think that's a big problem. Like you mentioned, the resolutions. People set goals that are kind of unrealistic sometimes.
No, they have to be
And
realistic. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can't be the 12th player on the team and say you want to make the all-star team
right,
this year, this coming year, and you've got 1 month to improve. Well, that's a little
right,
unrealistic. You might be able to say, maybe I can make the 4th best player. And yeah, I've got that in. It's one of the chapters I have in the book that goes through all the different ways of setting goals. They must be clear. They must be attainable. They must be measurable, those kind of things. There's like about 6 or 7 different things that you just, you use. And the research tells you if you do that, you will have a better chance. And the other thing they found, which kind of shocked me, it's much better to be writing this than putting it on a computer somewhere. It's not the same. It is not the same. There's something about writing it down that helps you to do it versus typing out something real quick on a computer. And you say, what's the same thing? No, that's not what research tells us. Writing it down makes a difference. And it's not like these things take forever. They don't.
yeah,
But and then what I try to do is show people I've got like 8 categories that I have goals for. And it's not just my career. It can be my relationships with family. It could be with friends, and all this kind of thing. And it's important to talk about those things that you want to attain, because otherwise you wait. And it's what the research tells us also. And beside me doing it, I've done it for 50 years that I know. I listened to a guy talk about it, and it made sense to me. Everybody has 86,400 seconds a day. How you use it, the more efficient you are. And if you just do one thing, and of course your goal from the sports philosophy, there's a big discussion today, really big discussion today about what is the best way for people to live their life, through the formal education or through sports education. Sports wins it hands down, because sports education never quits until the day you die. You've got 40-year-old, 50-year-old men out playing professional sports, and they're working on your body. They're working on your skill every day. And too many of us stop getting better. And my goal, how do I do it every day? Before I go to work, when I wake up, I exercise just about every day. And it can be walking, a mile or a mile and a half. And then I read 20 pages. So I've learned something. I'm better today than I was yesterday by something that I've learned. And of course, you try to do it in different areas, but some areas takes a little bit longer, but you can always read 20 pages. It doesn't take very long.
All right. Awesome.
Doesn't take very long at all.
Yep. Good stuff. Frank, you both of you be proud of me. I set a goal in 2017 to lose 50 pounds, and I've done it 3 or 4 times. And the only problem is I gained 75, but I still lost that 50. So I did achieve one of my goals.
You did it
over the last 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think,
Greg, I want to follow up your question about the book. Lou, I know the book is available on, I think it's available on Amazon in Kindle form. Is it available in hard copy and soft copy as well, or not?
Just soft copy. I didn't want to do a hard copy, and then it'll be the audio book ought to be available, I'd say, by the end of the month.
So people can hold it in their hand, or they can read it on their Kindle.
Yes.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Soft copy, and they've got the Kindle copy, and then they'll have the audio.
Great. Superb. Thank you.
Yep.
We've lost your audio for some reason. Yeah. There you go. Nope, it's still off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, there's that microphone at the top right.
how about now?
Yeah, you're okay. You did it.
I've got these fancy new ear pods or whatever you call them. Creating havoc for me. The big debate the other day on TV I listened to was, if you do an audio book, can you actually say you read a book?
Yeah, and a lot of kids like audiobooks. And so that's why I'm getting ready for this fall, making sure I've got all this out in my planning guide out by fall. And because I'm after helping the kids. And it's not that I don't want. I've had some older people already tell me they've enjoyed reading it. And, but I'm just trying to I want to give back. I want to help kids. And if I have to go through parents and teachers, I'll do it that way.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll tell you what, great story. I again, like I said this before, but I wish we had a couple hours we could sit and
I've got a lot of stories. I haven't even touched on the West Virginia stories and Coach Catlett and
I know.
Fred Schaus and giving me hell because when I was scouting, what year was it? 1982 when we played UNLV #1 in the country, and Gail comes in before the season, and I did all the scouting. And you couldn't get tapes back then. If you didn't go see them, they weren't helping you. So he said, I want you to see UNLV play 5 times. I said, okay. So I guess it's about a week before we play them. Gail comes in, he said, Lou, did you have to go to Las Vegas every time you saw them play? And I said, it was the cheapest. They only came east of Las Vegas one time, and that was they played everything out west. They were in Chicago, and I said, it's a lot more expensive in downtown Chicago to go watch them. He said, well, you're going to get to explain this to Fred Schaus. And so I had to go explain it to Fred, the athletic director. And I walk in, and of course, Fred was tough. I mean, he didn't want to spend a penny. And so he says, I see that you went. He said, it's okay that you scout him. But he said the same thing. He said, you have to go to Vegas. And as soon as I showed him the difference and how much it would cost if I'd have gone to Chicago versus flying, because, back then you could fly almost for free to Vegas. Hotels would fly you out there. And, so I got to talk to Fred a couple times over a couple different things that happened in my career. In fact, Greg, I think I told you this story, but I don't know. I know Frank's not heard it, and Darren. It's a great story. When I wrote the other book, Don't Choke, I was interviewed by the Indianapolis Star, a sports writer for the Indianapolis Star. And we had a nice interview, and, I didn't think a whole lot of it. And I was pretty naive then. And so he's asking all these questions, and he keeps going back to Bobby Knight. And he keeps saying, well, how do you think Bobby Knight would do? Do you think he should learn some of this stuff? And would he be a good junior high or high school coach? Well, I'd answer it, but I'd always say something else. So I don't think a whole lot of it. 2 days later, Coach Cannon comes in and he throws the sports paper on my desk. Here's the headlines. Author blasts Knight. That was the headlines. And I, explained it to him. I said, Gail, I said, I don't think Bobby Knight would be a great junior high coach if he acted the way he does. But I explained it. But he didn't put in the explanation. He just said that I blasted him. He says, well, you're going to get to talk to the athletic director of Indiana, Bobby Knight, Fred Schaus, me, and you in about an hour. So you better get ready. And I'm going to tell you, it was the neatest call I've ever been on in my life. Bobby Knight was cussing every other word. Not at me. Not at me. He said, hell no, I wouldn't be a good junior high coach. They'd have kicked me out in the first week. And then he started talking about, I guess him and that reporter had a problem for years. And I guess I should have checked those things out. I learned after that, or say, I need to look at the article before you print it now.
Yeah, lesson learned.
Oh, my.
Frank,
yes.
I don't know if you remember or not, but I think due to Lou's great scouting, WU knocked off UNLV that year. And I was there at that game, never forget it. Funny thing was, after I graduated from college and started coaching, probably 10 years into my coaching career, we'd gone down to Charlotte, North Carolina for a coaches clinic. And what they would do, Nike, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, Nike would have all these coaches that they, sponsored. They would all come to one place, and then us high school coaches would go for the clinic, and you'd have 15, 20 different coaches, high profile coaches,
right,
come in and give talks and that sort of thing. Well, we happened to go down to the lounge the first night we were there, and Jerry Tarkanian and Jim Valvano were sitting in a booth. Well, I was young and naive. I just walked over and sat down with them and started talking to them and having some beers with them, And it was close to the time when Coach Catlin was getting ready to give it up. And I had mentioned to Tarkanian, I said, that'd be a nice spot for you to land there at WVU if you want to come over. I said, I'm sure we'd welcome you with open arms. He says, last time I was there, they weren't very nice to me. I said, was that 1982? He said, it sure was. But he did say this. He said, that was the most electric crowd. He said, it was the most awesome experience.
It was unbelievable
crowd that day. Yeah, he said it was one of the most exciting games he'd ever been a part of. I thought that was pretty.
Well, you're not going to believe this. The night before, I was at a bar that I went to, and I'm out with some friends. Next thing I know, Coach Tarkanian is in the same bar. I went over, introduced myself, and sat down. We had the most wonderful time. And he said, I must be an idiot to come in here. And this was before the game. He said, I don't know what I was thinking when I okayed to come here. He said, I know it's going to be a zoo tomorrow, and I just hope that we can some way pull it out, which they didn't. Because of Greg Jones, who was just phenomenal. I think he had 28 or something like that.
What a game. Sure was. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're about out of time. We again want to thank you so much. And stick around after we get off the air, I want to talk to you. But we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Look forward to reading your book, as I know a lot of people are. And we just appreciate you so much. We'd love to have you back sometime.
Well, thanks a lot. And by the way, I've got 3 books coming for Frank, Darren, and Greg,
Oh,
signed by me. So
awesome.
if I just
That's great.
make sure you send me an address where I can send the books, please.
Okay.
If somebody would text me or something, so I have a place to send them.
Yep. I'll send you a text and get you some addresses. But yeah, stick around for a moment after we're off the
I
air.
will.
Talk to you just a
Yeah.
minute about.
And thanks a lot. I love doing it. If I can, like I said, maybe I can help somebody. That's what it's all
Awesome.
about.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lou.
Yeah.
All right.
All righty.
Lou Pelliccioni, ladies and gentlemen. That's fascinating. The books, I went and looked up and actually I had a friend who had a copy of the Dope Choke book, and I got a chance to read that. So that was awesome. And I know this one will be just as good. Frank, anything before we sign off for the night?
Well, just to talk about our guest next week and seeing Coach Rodriguez Stanikstaran, we're very pleased to welcome Keenan Cummins back. He's been with us once. And in fact, that, as you and I know, that was our most watched show of the year when Keenan was on the first time. And so obviously as a beat writer, he's watching what's going on very, very closely. He's at all the press conferences. And so he's one of those guys that is an insider to WVU sports, very credible. I subscribe. I would recommend if folks out there subscribe, go to wvsports.com. He's connected with Rivals, so you get all the Rivals information. Tremendous high school recruiting site, among other things. And so we're looking forward to have Keenan with us next Wednesday night at 7:00 on Mountaineer Locker Room.
Yep, be a good time. We're looking forward to that. We know he's a wealth of information. It'll be fun to talk to him, see where things stand after all this whirlwind that's going on around the football program. Be interesting.
That's right.
Appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight on the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now, brought to you, of course, by the New River Network and the Voice of College Football. And we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday night right here at the same time, 7:00. So good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Hi, everyone. Frank Fear here from Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. And we're pleased to be part of the Voice of College Football National Network. Mark Rogers and staff have done a great job with the network, and it's constantly adapting and expanding to bring content to you. Many of you are already following us on X and Facebook and Instagram. And if you're not, here are the URLs, the links to go to and take advantage of all the great content that's there for you. Even if you do that, you may not know some of the new doings at the Voice of College Football Network. One is a new podcast options that already thousands of people are taking advantage of. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast networks, and we encourage you to do that. Perhaps the biggest drum roll is the new Voice of College Football website with plenty of content, everything that you want to enjoy and can enjoy about college football. And remember, one thing that makes the Voice of College Football Network different is that we're 24/7, 12 months a year. It never ends. It's college football in the winter, the spring, the summer, and of course during the fall. We also want to announce, and Mark Rogers again and staff have done a great job with this, a relationship with Amazon.com. And here's Mark to tell you more about it.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link, and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.
Well, that's it for now. Let me thank you for your loyalty. The Voice of College Football Network. This is Frank Fear for Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. Hope to see you on our channel and other channels, VOCF. Take care, everybody.